Hey everyone, I'm JR from BoLS, and I'm here today to talk to you about D&D. D&D rules. And I'm not just saying that because it's a fun game. I'm saying that because that's the thing that you're probably fighting over right now. Everyone does. I understand it. I'm not saying you got the rules wrong. I'm just saying a lot of people haven't read the DMG. I have, and that's what we're here today to help you with. We're going to talk about 5 rules that a lot of people get wrong, so let's get right to it. First up, surprise and initiative. D&D 5th edition has been out for 7 years now, and people still don't get quite how surprise works. It's understandable considering that a lot of people played D&D when it was 3rd edition, and they were used to how surprise worked. You had a surprise round before initiative happened, and that was how it went, and you spent 10 minutes trying to figure out whether or not that goblin actually hit you for 3 damage so you could move on with your lives. But in 5th edition, it's much more simple, and yet it has to work under the shadow of 3rd edition, because surprise is an abstraction that doesn't necessarily reflect what you're doing. We'll get to that in a moment. First of all, here's how surprise works in 5th edition. The DM determines who might be surprised. If neither side is trying to be stealthy, they automatically notice each other. Otherwise, the DM compares the stealth checks of anyone with the passive perception score of each creature on the opposing side. That works whether you're ambushing the goblins or whether the goblins are ambushing you. Any character or monster that doesn't notice a threat is surprised at the start of the encounter. What does that mean? Well, if you're surprised, all it means is you can't move or take an action on your first turn of combat, and you can't take a reaction until that turn ends. Here's where it gets tricky. A round is made up of turns, so you might be surprised in combat, but roll very high on your initiative, which means that you're no longer surprised by the time the ambushing goblins get a chance to attack. Here's the thing that trips up a lot of people, though. When you are surprised, for the most part, all that matters is whether or not you get to act. Certain features, like the assassin, have rules that interact with whether or not a creature is still surprised when they get to go. So it might come up that if you're playing an assassin rogue, you get the drop on someone, but you roll poorly in initiative, and as a result, the target is no longer surprised, even though nobody but you has gone. It's a weird corner case of the rules, but it happens more often than you'd think. And a big part of that is because you roll initiative as soon as the hostilities start. That takes us right into the next rule that everyone gets wrong: when a fight actually starts. How often has it come up that the DM has their villain going off about, how they're going to crush you, or turn your souls into their magic sword, or, achieve the power of a god to rule over the world and make all of you puppets? You might want to skip that 2 rounds and just get right to the villain dying part by shooting an arrow at them while they're in the middle of their speech. Here's how it works. The second you decide to fire off an arrow, that's when you roll initiative. You might decide to fire off an arrow before anyone is aware that you're ready to do that, but if you roll a 1 on your initiative check, they get to take their actions, and if you weren't being particularly stealthy, they probably won't be surprised, so they'll see it coming, so they will get to give off the first 6 seconds of their monologue no matter what. So pump improved initiative, basically, if you want to stop people from talking. Next up, lighting and visibility. Ooh boy, that sounds like a super exciting set of rules that aren't weird or fiddly at all. Ha ha! Alright, here's how it works. Ordinarily, encounters take place in one of 3 kinds of lighting. Normal light, which is normal vision, no penalties. Dim lighting, which gives you disadvantage on perception checks because the area is lightly obscured. And heavily obscured, which means that perception checks automatically fail. That's total darkness. But you're probably playing an adventurer, and you probably aren't playing a human because you're not boring. That means you've probably got Darkvision. 9 out of 10 different PC options have Darkvision. It's one of the easiest thing to get. So you might be forgiven for thinking that Darkvision means you just see in the dark completely normally, or at least effectively, but Darkvision treats dim light as normal light and darkness as dim lighting. So if you're torchless underground, even with everyone equipped with Darkvision, you're still at disadvantage for your perception checks and a few other things. Now, while we're on the subject of darkness and visibility, let's mention one more curious thing, which is unseen targets and attacker. If you're attacking a creature you can't see, you have disadvantage, but if you're attacking a creature that can't see you, you get advantage on the attack. So if you're attacking someone that you can't see and that can't see you, completely cancels each other out. You can attack without any penalty. Makes dropping darkness on a crowd of enemies one of the best ways to cancel out advantage and disadvantage if you need it. It's strange, I know, but hey, sometimes you gotta not see your targets to fight. Worked for Luke, didn't it? All right, now we get into the real good stuff. Bonus action spells. There are two big ways that people get this one wrong. Most people probably think you can only cast one spell with like a level per turn. But you absolutely can cast more than one spell in a turn as long as you have a way of taking more than one action in a turn. Fighters who are also wizards can use their second wind feature to cast 2 fireballs on their turn, right? The only thing is that most people usually only get to cast 2 spells on a turn by relying on a bonus action spell, and that's where it gets messy. A spell cast with a bonus action is especially swift. You must use a bonus action on your turn to cast a spell, provided you haven't already taken a bonus action this turn. So you only get 1 bonus action. If you have some way of getting 2, hey, great homebrew class you're using, but you still can't use a bonus action and then cast a spell. You also can't cast another spell during the same turn except for a cantrip with a casting time of 1 action. Only like 2 combo thing that works is a bonus action spell and a cantrip. If you get extra actions, you can do whatever you like, though. So that's a good reason to take 2 levels of fighter, so you can cast 2 fireballs once a short rest. Moving along to our final thing, let's talk about cover. Did you know that D&D has a system for determining cover? A lot of people don't, and that's because a lot of fights quickly turn into boring melee fests as fighters clump up and ranged casters try their best to get good shots off. But D&D has a lot of mobility and ranged attacks, and you should be using them, whether you're players or DM, seriously. But here's why. Cover is a great way to add a bonus to your AC and your saving throws. A target with half cover, for instance, gets +2 to their AC and +2 to dex saves. And how do you have half cover? All you have to do is block at least half of your body with an obstacle, like a low wall, a piece of furniture, a narrow tree trunk, or another creature, whether that's an enemy or a friend. So if you're standing behind someone and someone takes a shot at you, you got half cover, right? 3/4 cover is a +5 bonus to AC and dex saves, and if 3/4 or more of you is covered by an obstacle, like a portcullis, an arrow slit, some iron bars, or an especially thick tree trunk, you have total cover. You can't be targeted because you can't be seen. You have to be completely concealed by an obstacle, but it's a great way to break an enemy's line of sight. You're trying to cast a spell and you don't want your opponent to counterspell. You can duck behind cover, ready in action to cast a spell, which means you technically start casting the spell. So you can ready, say, a magic missile the second you can see your opponent. And if you've got total cover, your opponent can't counterspell you. You can pop out, cast magic missile, boom, take that counterspell. Speaking of ranged attacks, if you fire into melee combat, there's no penalty. That's because everyone in D&D is a great shot and they never hit their friends. They never hit their friends, even on a natural 1. Which brings us to the bonus 6th thing that everyone gets wrong. And I mean, you probably have done this at the last session of D&D. How many times have you rolled a 1 and auto-failed no matter what? Or a 20 and thought that auto-succeeds no matter what? There's only one thing that a 1 auto-fails on. A natural 1 only means an attack misses. That's it. You can roll a 1 on your saving throw, and if your bonus is high enough because you've got great stats, great bonuses, and you're standing next to a paladin, you're good. You could roll a 20, and if you have a penalty in your charisma yet again because you wanted to dump it, and you rolled a 20 but can't get higher than an 18 and the DC is 20, you fail.
Well, that was certainly enlightening, wasn't it? I'm JR, this has been BoLS. Thanks for watching. I'm not gonna tell you to do what most YouTube videos would right now because someone else is doing that for me.